Hey, mate, 40 here. I mean, just what a face blast of news. It's just overwhelming how Donald Trump just takes over the conversation. I forgot what it was like when Donald Trump was about to become president of the United States. Just dominates the news cycle. It just drowns out everything else. I mean, the mind just spins at contemplating Pete Hegseth as SecDef, Secretary of Defense. To me, that's the worst of all these picks. I don't like the following 5 picks. I don't like Kristi Noem for Department of Homeland Security. I don't like these 4 picks. I hate Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. I hate Bobby Kennedy at Health and Human Services. I don't like Matt Gaetz at the Justice Department. But the mind can only absorb so much. These nominations just take up so much space in your head that there's not room for anything else in the news. It's just incredible. I forgot how exciting Donald Trump makes the news. It's like you're getting swept by a tsunami. And I think I know a little bit about his policies here, because you just keep bringing them down, right? You just keep moving them on up, and then eventually you just overwhelm. And so if you're an opponent of Donald Trump, all right, how much can you focus on? I mean, maybe Donald Trump just wants to suck up all the oxygen in the room to possibly to be able to get away with things. I know, as someone who's been online since 1997, I've said a lot of outrageous things online. I have carved a huge space for myself to say all sorts of outrageous things, because there's just only so much outrage people can expend on someone. And so I love having maximum room for freedom of expression. And is this what Donald Trump is doing? That he's just trying to create as much space as possible for himself? Wow, the mind boggles. Maybe Megyn Kelly.
And you heard Matt Gaetz, right? Because I think we were all like, "Oh, Pete Hegseth. Well, there's a curveball," and then it was like, "No," right? My exchanges with my team was like, "We're bullshit. No, you lie." And sure enough, he's proposing, he's nominating Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't even 100% sure Matt Gaetz was a lawyer until I was reminded he is a lawyer. And it's had the predictable response. Fetterman, I think, probably summed it up the best by saying the following. I think this is it. Let's listen to SOT 1.
I mean, I would describe it as God tier level trolling to just trigger a full-on China syndrome to own the libs in perpetuity.
Pretty accurate.
I think he's right.
Right? What do you guys make of it?
I love that he gets it now.
Yeah.
I mean, he totally gets it.
Well, I like to think of Donald Trump as like a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and he's testing the electric fencing on Washington, D.C. You know, like, see how many of the establishment he can anger with these nominations, which has been very entertaining.
Yeah, Pete Hegseth obviously created the defense industrial complex meltdown that we saw, and he was like, God, I really thought that would be worse.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a load of this one.
Totally. Somebody was saying that, like, Hegseth was the prep for Gaetz, you know, and now Gaetz could be prep, or Hegseth was the prep for Tulsi, and Tulsi will be the prep for Gaetz, and now God only knows what's coming next. No idea.
I think the greatest renewable energy in Washington, D.C. is outrage.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's threatening to take that meter down to 0.
All right, so let's talk about it, because Gaetz, for the listening audience, is controversial for a number of reasons. He is definitely a professional shit stirrer. He is fiercely loyal to Donald Trump. He actually is a very effective cross-examiner, and that I am realizing comes from his time as a lawyer. But he's very good when he's going after somebody on Capitol Hill at these hearings. But he is also immersed in controversy. Some salacious allegations have been made against him by the DOJ, which then decided not to pursue charges. Gaetz has denied these charges. We can talk about them. But still under investigation by the House Ethics Committee or Oversight Committee. Now that's done because he resigned yesterday when this news came out. But it's going to come up if he goes through a confirmation hearing. And then also something probably closer to your hearts, you guys. He took down Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker over on the Republican side, and then kind of didn't really have a solution ready to go once Kevin McCarthy fell. But this is one of the reasons why a lot of this.
Well, he took down Kevin McCarthy because Kevin McCarthy enabled the investigation of Matt Gaetz and some possibly underage girl. So Matt Gaetz, Kevin McCarthy took action to get rid of Matt Gaetz, and then Matt Gaetz retaliated.
The so-called establishment Republicans hate him, and therefore it is, let's say, far from a guarantee that he will be confirmed, because we already have Murkowski and Collins on the record seeming to say it's a no. They can't afford to lose too many others. And, you've got some squishes over there when it comes to these kinds of people. So I don't know. Andy McCarthy says, why are we even engaging in this debate? He's never going to be confirmed. So this is all pointless. So who wants to take it? Any of those?
Well, look, all of that is true. Everything you said is true. And he's dedicated his entirety of his congressional career to creating enemies, mostly from within, like mostly within his own party. And it kind of goes way beyond the establishment of your own party. He's just not played by anybody's rules, which I imagine probably makes him pretty popular amongst the American people, certainly outside the Beltway. The problem is, as you suggested, at some point you have to figure out how to get 51 votes to get confirmed as Attorney General. I think we may have talked about this, months and months and months ago, Megan, is that Donald Trump's nominee to be Attorney General was always going to be the most controversial of them all. It was going to be the most difficult because of this hardened Democratic opposition to it, some concerns lingering on the Republican side about what he would do with the Department of Justice. And so he just went full Leroy Jenkins on it and was like, if you're gonna be controversial, well, then let's make it the most controversial. And that's where we're at. I do think the only thing that I'm concerned about from a Trump standpoint is how much political capital do you use on this stuff? He's got 4 years. And you got to figure out how to get a whole bunch of things done in the first 6-8 months. And political capital is at its highest when you win an election, certainly in the fashion that he did. And you begin to drain political capital out of it with each thing that you do that becomes controversial, that you have to actually use the power of the presidency to try to get through. Using too much on this in what may very well be something that just can't be done concerns me a little bit, because there's a whole bunch of things about that Trump agenda the American people really, really want him to spend all of his political capital getting.
Yeah, but he has earned the right to pick who he wants. Yep. He had a huge win last Tuesday, and he has a mandate to pick whoever he wants, and the Senate is going to consider them, and we'll see what happens. But I mean, if you look at Gaetz, like you said, he can cross-examine. The guy is not without talent. And if you look at the beginning of his career, he is a guy who supported Jeb Bush in 2016, which I think is why Comfortably Smug liked him so much. Smug really liked Jeb.
So I look at the same data that Ashbrook and Holmes are presenting, and I think it's accurate, but my conclusion is completely different. President Trump did come away with an absolute mandate, which is why I think every one of these senators should be on board with it. And like Holmes said, there's a small window where Trump can act, and it's even shorter than 4 years. It's even shorter than 2 years. It's probably the first 100 days where you can really move the ball before you start getting all the opposing forces organized and trying to stop Trump's agenda, which is why I think Matt Gaetz would be the perfect person you want in place in those first 100 days. I think what most of these people are afraid of is, oh God, we had the Department of Justice and we used it to go after conservatives. We used it to go after Trump. We had Merrick Garland calling parents who would show up to school board meetings domestic terrorists. So we don't need to send, the same old. We need to send the message that, hey, that time is up. There's a new sheriff in town.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree with you, Smug. Yeah. I was never really a Matt Gaetz fan. I was never really a huge Matt Gaetz person at all. I haven't really spent any time thinking about him other than with that whole Kevin McCarthy defenestration thing. But I know that there are allegations against him. There are no charges. So that's that. I mean, they weren't able to make any charges, and it involved his alleged relationship with a 17-year-old girl, which he's denied. And then they were accusing him of sex trafficking. He went on, he denied this. This is the thing he went on Tucker about a long time ago. He answered the charges, says bullshit, and didn't go anywhere. So, I mean, that's that. We'll see what the House says if there's something more. But if there was something seriously more, we would have seen a charge. But what I look at is two things. Number one, and I tweeted this out yesterday, if you are Donald Trump and your chosen attorney general has turned you over to Robert Mueller, who then ruined your first term as president with a bunch of bullshit, then you leave office and the next guy's attorney general is behind not one, but two criminal prosecutions of you, and his DOJ is cooperating with not one, but two state prosecutions of you in a bridge that's never been crossed in our 250-year history as a nation, then I, too, might prize loyalty to me above all other qualities and go with a guy like Matt Gaetz. Who can blame Trump for trying to pick the most loyal soldier he can find for this position? And then point two is what you just said, Smug. Eric Holder was a partisan hack loser. And so is Merrick Garland. Partisan hack loser. So what do I don't care. Like at this point, I'm like, you know what? F you people. Get the fighter in there. The gloves are off. You took them off. Now Trump's brought in his own guy with the brass knuckles. It's on.
Yeah, that's the greatest fear of Democrats, is that other people will do to them what they've been doing to the American people. And Trump picking people who are loyal to him is exactly what the American people want. That's why he has the popular vote on top of the Electoral College in his victory. He needs to send people who will execute his vision 100%. And if he sees Matt Gaetz as...
So I find Mark Halperin a voice of sanity. And I really like how Mark Halperin approaches this tsunami of news. And I think this is an approach worth emulating. Instead of falling off on either side of the Donald Trump reaction, either Trump's great, whatever he does, it's awesome, or whatever Trump does is terrible. Let's pause.
I think one of the reasons that I've been relatively good over the last 10 years in covering Donald Trump is because I don't cover him by say, I'm going to cover him the way I would cover a conventional politician. I understand that both in his personal style and as an appeal to the electorate, he's not conventional. Now, maybe there were presidents 100 years ago who were more like this, but in our shared lifetime, we haven't had a president like this, and we've never had a reality show president. Someone who never was in the military or had held elective office before throughout the republic. So I don't cover. I understand that he can't be covered in a standard way, but at the same time, I think I'm pretty good at putting him in the context of the norms to say what's possible to do. What could he get done? And I've always wondered what it would have been like if in 2016, someone just like Donald Trump, emphasizing the issues he emphasized, a business background, outsider, running against a Bush and a Clinton, but without all the personal stuff and without the occasional or frequent lies and excessive statements, what that person would have been like. I think that person would have an extremely high approval rating and would break the back of the Democratic Party, but he didn't. So it's this constant balance between saying, how is he different from the norm that is interesting and creates possibility for him and for the country? And how is he different in ways that are scary, dangerous, troubling, and for a lot of Americans upsetting? I think I have that balance decently down. And I think, as most of you know, the problem with the dominant media is they only cover the second part. They have no appreciation for the first part. Okay. I don't remember in my 10 years covering him, and I covered him to some extent back in 2011, so it's longer, but since 2015 till now, when he actually ran, I don't remember a moment like this, or I should say quite like this, because these nominations, I have no idea how many of these people are going to be confirmed. Tulsi Gabbard, Kristi Noem, Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, Bobby Kennedy, 5. Those are the 5. They're all going to shake up their departments if they're confirmed. They're all political allies of Donald Trump. They're all people who bring an outsider perspective outside the norm. And if you talk to MAGA people and to Mar-a-Lago, they'll say, that's what Donald Trump wants. That's what his followers want. That's what the mandate he has is. They also all have policy positions that many Americans don't like. And in the case of Bobby Kennedy, some policy positions that are not supported by science. Okay. In the case of Pete Hegseth saying women shouldn't be in combat, that's controversial, but
I'm surprised how much this election result is having a great effect in the real world. All right, hundreds of people are removing pronouns from their social media accounts. Many people are wearing MAGA gear, up front, out loud, with pride, in Beverly Hills, in Los Angeles, in New York City, in all sorts of places where you never thought you would see MAGA gear. The left's reaction has been muted and stunned silence. I often say who's the president doesn't make that much of a difference in your real life. I'm surprised how much of a difference this is making in my real life. It's been wonderful.
It would change the current policy in a way that a lot of Americans wouldn't like. But then there's the issue of whether they're up to the job. All 5 of those jobs involve management, and in the case of the Pentagon and Homeland Security and HHS, massive bureaucracies, hundreds of thousands of millions of employees in the case of the Pentagon. So when you think about, will they do a good job? That's going to, if they're confirmed, that'll eventually be an important question. Will they be good at what they do? Some people are saying, well, it's all going to be consolidated in the White House.
My biggest objection, all right, I don't like these nominations. My biggest objection is that there's very little reason to believe that these nominees would be competent if they took office.
Who cares who's in the cabinet? It's still an important job, even if this White House skews in the balance between control from the White House versus delegation to cabinet secretaries maximally to control of the White House. It's still very important what the quality of the people running these departments. Can they do the job? But before that, the question will be, will they be confirmed? And you hear from all the Democrats in the Senate and in the interest groups and in the media, and from some Republicans, depending on the nominee, concerns about them, but they're not always delineated, right? Is the concern that they're going to be too revolutionary in what they do for the department? Is the concern that they can't manage it? Is it concern that they have policy positions that are out of step?
So I like how Mark Halperin is thinking out loud here and how he's bending over backwards to be fair. Because to be honest, my immediate reaction, my visceral reaction is I don't like these 4 picks. I don't like Pete Hegseth. I don't like Kristi Noem. I don't like Robert Kennedy Jr. more than any of the others. And I don't like Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. I like hearing Mark Halperin talk these concerns out loud.
Some people have multiple concerns. I think that there's real questions about whether all 5 of them will be confirmed. All 5. Some people have the point of view that says Trump.
There's never been anything like this in American political history. Right? We're in, once again, a Trump unprecedented moment. So I love history. I love reading back on history. There's nothing that I can compare this moment to.
Trump will get his way on all of them. And my experience today with the Kennedy intention to nominate added in was the same as yesterday. Really smart people who understand Capitol Hill and politics and confirmation history say Gaetz is going to be confirmed. Kennedy's going to be confirmed because, for one thing, as I tweeted earlier today, every Republican senator has constituents, donors, staff, family members in some cases who want jobs in the Trump administration. And if they're the ones who try to take his nominees down, and again, forget about the recess appointment. 50 votes means you can lose Murkowski and Collins. Maybe you won't lose them on everybody, but you'll lose them on some probably. You can lose one more. So every one of them could go down, I think, but they could all be confirmed. And as I said, I talked to people today who said they'll all be confirmed. Then I talked to people who say some of them won't be confirmed. But I also think there's a possibility that if the public weighs in on these people, and if the objections to them are wrong.
Wait, Elliott Blatt says they need to outlaw slushies. Bro, where's your libertarian side? All right, slushies can be an important part of a balanced diet. Slushies are delicious if they're prepared correctly.
Broad-based enough, based on these different categories of reasons to think they're not the right people. Some ideological, some managerial, some about their past histories. Then I think the Senate could say, sorry, Mr. President, these people aren't being confirmed. Then nominations can be stopped at different steps along the way, right? They can be withdrawn before there's a hearing or before there are courtesy calls. They can be withdrawn after the hearing begins. Excuse me. They can be withdrawn or they can be defeated in committee. They can have a committee vote to send it to the floor, or no recommendation, but it goes to the floor and then there's no vote there, or they can be voted down on the floor, right? It can end any number of steps along the way at the different stages. Normally, one confirmation fight takes up a lot of time, and the press loves these. So these fights will get a disproportionate amount of coverage until it's clear that there's 50 votes for them. And I don't think that'll be clear for a while, because all 5 of these, and keep in mind, there are more nominations to be laid out. Others could I can't imagine topping Kennedy and Gaetz, but there could be other controversial nominees who have various categories of questions about them. And this will take up a lot of space. Now, I have a new theory, because people ask, why is Donald Trump taking this on? Why is he putting out so many controversial nominees? Is it out of personal loyalty? Is it because he wants to stick it to the deep state? Is it because he secretly wants some of them to fail so he can put in other people? There's all sorts of theories. My new theory, and it may not be their intention, but I think it will be the effect. The press will focus so much on this because they just love the dynamics of confirmation politics, which I do too, that they'll be able to do a lot of policy stuff that's not going to get as much attention. Now, in some cases, they'll want it to get attention, but if there's stuff they want to just kind of get through without a big national debate, executive orders, etc., they can do that, because this story is going through January. And if you've followed these before, we're going to start seeing long profiles of Tulsi Gabbard. Great example, Tulsi Gabbard in Syria. I could tell you sort of what's there. You can Google and read stories, but we're going to all learn more about Tulsi Gabbard in Syria than we ever have. What are RFK's actual positions on vaccines and other things that would come under his purview if he was the Secretary of HHS? What's the truth about the allegations against Matt Gaetz? What kind of lawyer is Matt Gaetz? How'd he do in law school? What's Kristi Noem's management experience like? They're going to be long newspaper stories about all of this. And then we have the complexity of, we talked about this in the morning meeting, it's not clear to me that the administration is going to subject their nominees to FBI background checks. And I don't know what the Senate would do about that. If they would take some private background checks, or they try to find some other way to have the FBI involved. And remember, there's a difference between illegal and politically problematic. The FBI is not looking for embarrassing things. They're looking for things that are against the law or would open someone up to blackmail potentially, not a political scandal. So I can tell you, I don't know, I have not spent time doing the investigative work on these 5, but I can tell you based on what I know about them, that I think the probability is high that we are going to learn more about these 5. And as Sean said in the morning meeting, Sean said, I think they'll be confirmed if we don't learn more. But I think we are going to learn more. Obviously, the question is, what is the more we learn, and does that change the calculation for people? But it's hard for me because of my interest. I just love, as I said several times, I just love confirmation politics. I think it's so interesting. It's hard for me to think about anything else about the incoming Trump administration. And as a consumer of all the political media, that's going to, I know it's already happening. It's going to take up a lot of the bandwidth of the press's coverage and of our conversations here. And again, I have no idea how it's going to end. Although I'll circle back to my beginning. I'm doing the weave here, by the way. Although I'm pretty good, as I say, at covering Trump as an outsider playing by different rules, some good, some bad, and Trump violating rules that we really should all be thinking about. I find this really complicated to understand. The fact that after yesterday's reaction to Gaetz, he went forward with RFK. No normal president-elect would do that. Someone, the chief of staff designate, or someone would say to the president-elect, you've already got a lot of planes stacked up over LaGuardia. Don't bring another plane in that needs to land.
Right. No other president would do this. I don't like these picks, but it's incredibly exciting and bewildering. It's like drinking a good slushy, that ice rush to your brain. That's what Trump is doing with these picks.
It's too much, but he did. And in a normal transition, the nomination of Bobby Kennedy to HHS, enormously controversial on multiple levels, would be like the biggest thing. And it would raise questions about the judgment of the operation. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with at least 5 just almost unfathomable choices for the normal rules. No one should accuse me of saying he's not entitled to his people in general. No one should accuse me of saying I'm for the deep state and I'm for no shakeup of the status quo, because tens of millions of Americans share Donald Trump's belief.
So I was reading The Atlantic, trying to figure out how should I think about these unprecedented picks for the Trump cabinet, and there was a thoughtful essay by, is it Frederick Foer, the man who wrote a biography of Joe Biden and his first 2.5 years in office. And Foer says that this will be the end of many people's public service careers, that people in the Justice Department and Health and Human Services and in the Defense Department, they'll just quit, and that we will lose, right? We will lose all these people. Why the Gaetz announcement is already destroying the government. All right, this is Franklin Foer. Donald Trump just broke the federal government. U.S. government is an aggregation of expertise, a collection of individuals who have inherited an ethos and a set of practices handed down through the decades. And now a whole tier of career employees who occupy their job regardless of the partisan affiliation of the president have started thinking about leaving the government. So is this really bad? Right? Will this be the end of effective government? I know these people, Franklin Foer says. I've seen the blood drain from their faces when they hear about the Matt Gaetz appointment. I hear them ponder their next steps. Right? The departure of civil servants will wreck the government for the foreseeable future. Career civil servants will be replaced by Trump loyalists. Once the government struggles to perform basic tasks, its legitimacy will erode too. The shift might prove irreversible. Organizational culture is a precarious thing. Once it breaks down, it might be impossible to repair. Squandered faith in institutions is difficult to restore. The construction of the American government is one of the great American achievements. It took centuries to erect, and the arrival of a clutch of conspiracists could destroy it all in a flash. All right, so I would say that's a 10 out of 10 in alarmism. I would side with that op-ed at a 2 out of 10 level. Right? I think it brings up some legitimate questions
about these departments and what needs to be done. But these are 5 people whose qualifications for these significant jobs, whether it's ideological or managerial or biographical, are deeply in question by any rational standard. And it now falls to one half of 1/3, a co-equal branch, to John Thune and his 52 colleagues to decide what they want to do about this. There's the prerogatives of the Senate to not be rolled by the executive branch. There's individual senators' views about the fitness of these 5 and others to serve in these jobs. But there's also the reality that it's an incoming Republican president who won the popular vote. You hear Democrats already saying, some people in the media, Trump is for.
So there were 3 books about the Biden administration, and none of them delved into Joe Biden's obvious unfitness for office, his occasional mental decline, his obvious senility, his ability to handle a normal workload. None of them even touch on this. Bob Woodward's latest book, War, right, it just starts to touch on it for a few paragraphs. So Franklin Foer, he skipped that whole story. And so the same news media that covered up for Joe Biden's obvious senility for the past 7 years is now the news media that is telling us that Donald Trump is about to wreck the federal government. However, right, there is a much tamer, saner version of the New York Times. Right, they have been humbled by this election. Right, their coverage is not at the hysterical level it was prior to the election.
Forfeiting his mandate. He's forfeiting his political capital. He's dooming this term in the first 100 days and any legislative progress by asking the senators to devote time to deciding up or down. I continue to weigh in, despite the tone of some of this. I continue to weigh or put my finger on the side of, I think it's more likely all 5 will be confirmed than most people do. And again, I'll talk to senators or senators' aides, and they'll say, well, these 3 will get through, but these 2 won't. But it's not always the same 2. The focus will be on and is on Gaetz and Kennedy. But do not underestimate the potential of the other 3 to be really problematic. Don't get caught up in the politics of the Democrats, but do listen to the substance. Gaetz will have opposition research dumped on him from both sides, but you're going to see a lot of research from the Democrats on the others. And it's going to be fascinating to see how some of the Republican senators, including Mitch McConnell, adjudicate these folks. All right. Donald Trump's administration. Jill.
I think it's just like Donald Trump.
So she is a former editor of the New York Times. And then Seth, the guy in the upper right, is a Republican strategist.
Never seen anything quite like these people, the most recent cabinet nominees. And it's of a piece of him being like no other candidate for president or no president that we've covered before.
5 and counting extremely controversial nominees.
Yeah, I think I broadly agree with Jill. I think that Donald Trump won a very impressive mandate. Not only did he win the presidential election, he won the popular vote as a Republican, right? I think there is a certain political persuasion.
As you look at Kennedy and
so Jill Abramson is a great reporter. She is liberal left in her politics.
And Matt Gaetz, and you say, they're going to take sledgehammers to their agencies. The Justice Department is filled.
So the chat says, like she knows. All right, she is a highly accomplished journalist. All right, she knows a lot more than all of us carrying on this conversation right now put together. Right, she has dedicated her life to covering American politics. She's focused on Washington, D.C. She wrote a book. She's written several books, but I'm thinking about one of them, the Judge Thomas hearings before he was passed to the Supreme Court.
With career attorneys, many of whom, if not most of whom, are, I think, progressive and Democrats. And, Lord only knows what Kennedy is going to do with the people who work at FDA, who are, many of them priceless.
Okay, let's see what Jesse Waters has to say.
Waters next.
Welcome to Jesse Waters Prime Time tonight.
I would describe it as God tier level trolling to own the libs in perpetuity.
Trump's cabinet is one big fat middle finger.
We do a little trolling. It's called we do a little trolling.
Don't you want healthy children, the chemicals out of our food? And don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption?
It's official. RFK Jr. chosen to make America healthy again.
How do you feel about the specter of a second Trump administration?
I will move. I can't live in this country if he became president.
Hollywood not handling democracy very well. Justine Bateman is here.
I'd almost rather die than do this.
Sounds like a yes to me, Skip.
Plus,
have you seen Cher around here?
Who?
Let's take you inside of Mar-a-Lago. Trump, Elon, and God bless America. You can say the vibes are high at the winter White House. And 47 says it's only the beginning.
We just had a big victory. You may have read about it. Setting records with practically every voting group, every voting class. They say most consequential win in the last 129 years. What's that all about? That's all right. I just wanted to win. Didn't have to be that much. I just wanted to win.
So much winning.
But we did. Yeah, too much winning. Too much winning. No, there's no such. Is there any such thing as too much winning? No. But we have to win now as a country.
And it's official. The Republicans have captured the House. Democrats are shut out of power everywhere. And now another Trump could be going to Washington. Nope, not Barron yet. Lara Trump could be Florida's next senator. When Rubio leaves for the State Department, DeSantis gets to pick his replacement. And Lara says she's into it. Now, while Congress shapes up, Trump's nominating people at warp speed. Just in, RFK Jr. has been tapped to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Trump says RFK will make the department follow the science, not the money, be beacons of transparency, end the chronic disease epidemic, and make America healthy again. Maha.
For 19 years, I have got every morning, without one exception, I have said a prayer to God to put me in a position where I could end the chronic disease epidemic. On August 23rd of this year, God sent me Donald J. Trump.
Now, I don't like this man. I don't like what he stands for. I don't agree with him on almost anything, but he does represent the point of view of millions and millions of Americans who rarely get to have their voice heard in the federal health bureaucracy. So maybe it's a good thing for our democracy.
Big pharma, big sugar, watch out. Certain stocks dropping like rocks the moment he was picked. RFK is going to clean house.
I don't think it's great that pharmacy stocks fell. All right, I think overall pharmacy companies do far more good for America than harm.
Doritos, Cheez-Its, Captain Crunch, gummy bears.
Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tetrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives.
They poison our food and then sell us pills. We get sick and they get rich. RFK wants us to eat clean, and he's ready to axe corrupt government staff on day one. TV doctors are worried we're not going to need them anymore.
It's not often that the entire medical and public health community is going to be in lockstep on something, but they're pretty close on this in terms of their significant concerns, horror even. Somebody said to me today, I can't think of any single individual who'd be more damaging to public health than RFK.
Their career staff texting me saying this was just the push they needed to try to get out. They were already on the fence and worried. So we're not just going to see this incredible kind of integration of ideology that has no science behind it.
America is the sickest country in the entire developed world. And TV doctors are happy with the status quo. 3/4 of American adults are overweight or obese. It doesn't have to be this way. America should be...
Wait, the chat says fewer yoga pants atrocities in public. What do you have against yoga pants? Right, yoga pants look fantastic on attractive women.
The healthiest country. Our food's so toxic, we're not even allowed to sell it in Europe. We all started getting sick and fat in 1990. That's when they added ultra-processed food to the food pyramid. Doctors began prescribing everyone pharmaceuticals, and everyone got a desk job and stared at a screen all day. Have you been to the beach recently? We used to be a lot skinnier. The government let the food and drug industry turn us into Jabba the Hutt. And they say RFK's dangerous. These people should be brought up on child abuse charges. I saw an elementary school class walking down the street in Midtown yesterday. Looked like the Cowboys' offensive line. The Army can't even recruit. They had to lower their standards because everyone was too big and slow. Show me a 70-year-old who can do this.
I can't do that. That's more than I can do.
This is the most powerful woman or man at Health and Human Services, Rachel Levine. Would you consider him or her healthy and fit? RFK Jr. would oversee agencies that lied about COVID and told us to hide from a virus that spreads inside. Why are Democrats so bent out of shape about a ripped 70-year-old wanting to take food coloring out of Doritos and go for a hike once in a while? This guy wants clean water and fresh fruit, and Democrats are calling him crazy. RFK Jr. is saying, let's diet and exercise, and the left saying, no, 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 stay inside, eat takeout, and inject Ozempic. If anyone tells you that's healthy, they're the threat. Trump's mandate was to make America healthy again, get DEI and CRT out of the Pentagon, and fire the spies who lied to us. If you're against that, you just outed yourself.
The choice of Tulsi Gabbard as DNI is not in the best interest of the American people. It's not in the best interest of our national security. This is so extraordinarily dangerous.
Being a serviceman, it does not make you qualified to lead the Department of Defense and to have access to our nuclear weapons. I'm very disturbed by this. This guy is clearly a sycophant for Donald Trump.
The Attorney General sees the most sensitive intelligence in the government. He's threatening to blow up the department and has accused it of being corrupt. And there's a real fear inside the Justice Department that he or people like him would order investigations where there was no predicate, where there was no crime.
So the CIA and Wall Street are going to be putting up a big fight over Trump's cabinet. Big. The country voted for change, and they're going to try to stop it. It's not just about eliminating their power, profiteering, and corruption. It's about exposing what they've done, like the Department of Justice, who spied on Trump, raided his house, arrested him, and covered up for the Bidens. They're acting like the Gaetz nomination could break them. The headline in Politico, you thought the DOJ staffers were in a full-blown freak-out before? What the F is happening? OMG. I'm struggling to find words. Why are they surprised that Trump wants a reckoning at DOJ? The department that covered up Epstein, Diddy, and both Trump assassination attempts. Who did you think Trump was going to put in charge there? Tulsi, Hegseth, Gaetz, Kennedy, Washington's worst nightmare. Sources inside the Pentagon say the mood's dark, feels like a morgue, and they're worried about a shakeup. Every single person that was elevated and appointed by Milley will be gone. The State Department's so scared of change, they're emptying their bank accounts and sending all their money to Ukraine.
President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
These people weren't scared that Trump's a fascist. They're scared that he's effective. Washington looks like a bunch of scared teens trying to clean up their rooms before dad comes home. And everyone's being polite. You know, you don't want to get on his...
Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard, I don't have any negative feeling about her. I mean, she may be terrible, but I don't know enough to be concerned about Tulsi Gabbard. All right, that pick doesn't bother me.
What happened to the threat of democracy talk? What happened to the fascist talk? By the way, I know I've said those things about Trump as well, but I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about his political opponents like President Biden. When they say it, it holds way more weight than me. I'm just trying to figure out, how do you go from he's an existential threat to democracy to welcome back?
Trump's picking firebrands to tear down the system that tried to destroy us. Fetterman calls it karma.
I would describe it as God-tier level trolling to just trigger a full-on China syndrome to own the libs in perpetuity.
If the Republicans stick together, there's nothing anybody can do about it. We have everything they want that we want.
Okay, Tulsi Gabbard, maybe she would be a good pick. I know the neocons hate her. So
I want to spend a minute on Tulsi Gabbard. So, Director of National Intelligence, which has gotten a lot of people upset as well. By the way, was it the greatest trade to get Tulsi for Liz Cheney? I mean, that I don't think you could improve that. I'd make a sports analogy, but I don't know any. So they're upset. They don't want her to do this. They're actually back some corners of the internet with she's a Russian spy, like she's somehow Russian because Hillary Clinton put out that nonsense when Tulsi was so effective in that 2020 presidential debate. In any event, what is going to happen with Tulsi? Will she be confirmed as Director of National Intelligence?
Yeah, I think she's got a different set of criteria and that most people do like Tulsi Gabbard. And I think she's spent an awful lot of time over the last couple of years explaining her journey from, being a Bernie Sanders supporter, essentially, all the way to Donald Trump and the Republican Party and where she's gone. From an intel perspective, she's got a resume that works amongst anyone you'd want to see there. She's a veteran. She's very smart. She's spent a lot of time on these issues. I think there'll probably be some pretty serious questions. I mean, this is what the nomination process should look like, by the way. I mean, you're going to have Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, who's now number 3 in leadership, who will lead the intel panel in the Senate. And he's got some very specific ideas when it comes to intelligence and national security that he's going to want some assurances and be addressed upon. She's going to have that opportunity. And I think provided she handles those confirmation questions well, I can very easily see her getting confirmed.
Well, can I ask you another question? By the way, credit to Greg Price for that Tulsi for the Cheney line. He tweeted that out earlier. Can I ask you a question? So she's going to get in there. I don't think Tulsi is an expert in national intelligence. I don't see anything in her resume that would suggest she is, but she's an honest broker. She served our country in the military. Obviously, she was a congresswoman. I think he's hiring her for her judgment and her loyalty and her sensibilities. So is that good enough? I mean, she's going to be surrounded by a team that will help her understand the issues. But am I wrong? Like, as long as she's got a team that can say, here's what we're looking at, here are the decisions we need to make, she can do this job.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no question she can do this. I do think she's got pieces of her resume that do fit this. And I think she spent an inordinate amount of time on national security issues in her career and sort of understands it. There's one set of questions that is going to be most significant amongst Senate Republicans, and it comes down to a libertarian viewpoint of data collection and information collection of our intelligence agencies. This has been a battle going back to the Bush administration. Democrats used to be for it, and then they were against it. Republicans have always sort of had this viewpoint of what we ought to be collecting on foreign adversaries, and the more libertarian-leaning side of the Republican Party, think like Rand Paul, has always had a problem with that. And she's sort of aligned herself with the Rand Paul view of a lot of that. That is not where the center of that conference is. But I think when she listens to these arguments and understands fully, you're right, she's an honest broker. I think she has every capability of providing assurances that she's not going to shut down the intelligence apparatus of the United States, as some people would want her to do. She won't do that. And I think
she's not going to go spying on civilians, though.
Yeah. She's not. And that is where this whole thing has gone astray, and where people have tried to figure out where those lines are. It's a very complicated process, but it's one who somebody like that with integrity could help get the base of the Republican Party back to a one view of how you handle intelligence collection from our agencies.
I think the one thing that Smug mentioned earlier, which is 100% true, and I think is a through line on all of these picks, is Donald Trump wants people he can trust in all of these departments to execute his agenda and vision for America. And that means they have to have loyalty to that vision, whether it's Matt Gaetz or Pete Hegseth or Tulsi, somebody with a different view who reflects the mandate that the voters gave him on election day is there to disrupt the status quo and the failed bureaucracy.
Okay, let's get more here from Jill Abrams and Mark Halperin. This is Jill.
Professionals and experts and all kinds of important things, from, salmonella poisoning to, birth control. And, he's on the record as, favoring some pretty nutty approaches to medical care. And obviously he's a anti-vaxxer. It seems some of these people are as opposite of
because it is a unique institution in the world and in American journalism. They will do more to explain,
talking about the New York Times,
to the public who these 5 people are, 6 if you want to count Lee Zeldin, right? The Times will write longer, better research stories than anybody else will. So there's one way to look at these people and to say they've got strengths and weaknesses. They have iconoclastic views that are different. They'll change the mission. Employee morale will be bad in every case. The career people won't like it. But there's also the reason why Donald Trump won. The reason why he chose them was to bring these different views, and the country's deals were on the wrong track. No one would say these agencies, these departments run perfectly. So I can see and hear in my mind's eye how these stories will be written by the New York Times. They will accentuate the negative. They will be stories about their backgrounds being questionable, controversies in their background, their most controversial positions, their deviation from what liberal academics say they should believe. And in some cases, like Kennedy, how they deviate from established science. Okay? That, to me, is not the way the story should be written. So, Jill, I want to stop you, because I thought the tone of the Gaetz coverage was surprisingly fair under the circumstances.
Okay.
But
Me
too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and that's important, and Drew, I'm glad you say that. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're having a conversation, so I hope I'm not coming up as rude, but rather conversational. I thought it was, as a sophisticated reader of the Times and its bias, I thought it reflected they're being chastened by the election. But Matt Gaetz is largely considered controversial because some people don't like his smart aleck personality, and because he was investigated. He was not charged. So to say he should be getting negative coverage for whether he can do it, I'd like to know. I don't even remember where he went to law school, but I'm interested in his qualifications to be attorney general, not the allegations that led to nothing, or that Kevin McCarthy doesn't like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even see why those things should be as high up as they are. We should be scrutinizing him to say whether he can do the job. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
No, I get what you're saying. It's a matter of emphasis and placement. I think,
but it's not fair
to go to the mat defending medical experts to say that all of their ideas are bulletproof, that all of their ideas are the sorts of things that should be beyond question and beyond the government's question, right? And so if what this does is it prompts those sorts of conversations to happen, I do think there's probably value there as part of this broader conversation of the nomination process. I think
the test of the Times coverage of RFK Jr. is going to be whether brainworm and the dead bear
right. Tweet from the governor of Colorado, who's a Democrat, who Dan used to work for, okay, about Bobby Kennedy. Put the tweet up, please. So Jared Paul.
This is Jared Polis, right, Democratic governor of Colorado. I couldn't believe that he came out with a tweet largely in support of the nomination of Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Well, he's iconoclastic, but I'll make this bigger. Hold on.
Yeah, I can't read it.
All right. I'm excited by the news that the president-elect will appoint Bobby Kennedy to HHS. He helped us defeat vaccine mandates in Colorado and will make America healthy again by shaking up HHS and FDA. It's a very long tweet. It goes on, has a few quibbles, but before you mock him or disagree, I want to share with you some quotes that if he follows through, show why I'm excited. All right. This is someone who's talked about as a potential Democratic nominee in 2028. He's a very smart guy. He's a former House member. Dan, what do you read into his tweet? Why is he so supportive of Bobby Kennedy running against the dominant view on the left, which is he's a nut and his position's rather mainstream and he has no business having the job?
Look at running, and I think this is about libertarian states' rights.
This is a great path forward for the United States, so that if you want a particular style of government, right, you move to a state in alignment with the type of politics that you prefer. So the American federal system is ideally suited for our polarized age. You want immediate, free, unfettered access to abortion, move to a state where you can have that. If you want to live in a different state that has a different attitude towards sex and abortion, then go move to a Republican state. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for the United States to embrace the diversity of federalism, right? People should go live in a state that is in broad alignment with their political preferences. The Australian political system also has a federal system, but the differences are so much bigger in the United States, right? Criminal justice, voting, healthcare, almost everything is pretty much the same in all of the Australian states. But in the United States, it's just all over the map. There is such a dramatic difference between Alabama and New York and California and Arkansas and Texas. American states differ 10 times as much from each other as do Australian states from each other.
Lane that he is going to try to establish. And, just as Jared has always been for legalizing.
This is the most thoughtful Democratic strategist that I see on social media. He's a regular on the Mark Halperin show. Name's Dan. He just does a great, honest job representing the Democratic point of view, but also operating with a presumption of grace and some empathy extended towards Republicans.
Marijuana, he was always for gay rights through that prism of leave us alone, let people do what they want to do in private.
Right. If you want to live in a state with tons of gay rights and easy access to marijuana, then perhaps there should be states that allow that. If you want easy access to gambling, perhaps there should be states aligned with free access to gambling. And then if you don't want those things, right, there should be traditional red states that don't have them.
This is something that he believes strongly in. And he will, as he did, put up this tweet. He's going to pick some fights with the base of the party about the need for reform, about the need to do things differently. Drew, I don't quite, he does support experts in other areas, but I agree with you that the anti kind of expert, like let's bring in different experts with different skill sets and different ways of looking at problems, is very resonant not only with Republicans, but as we heard on the morning meeting, or have heard frequently, where the Bernie Sanders wing meets the Trump wing is there isn't a lot of distance. And Jared, I think, is trying to appeal to that crowd with this tweet.
Probably won't like this take, but I do think we make far too much about these nominations and who supports them and who doesn't. I was looking back at some of the coverage from the Times and from others the first time this all happened in 2016 and the way we talked about the names. And it's funny.
Elected the first time, there was a huge march by scientists who were very worried that he was anti-science. And I think.
And right now, it just doesn't appear that the left has the energy and the enthusiasm to go marching.
The Kennedy nomination is going to be particularly controversial because it touches all the buttons about settled science, and Kennedy very much challenges that. And he, his views are, for the most part, to say they're unorthodox is an understatement for some of them.
Right.
And in an area like science,
and also with Mueller. I think right now.
This is a longtime friend of mine, Nancy Rollman, always a thoughtful person, pretty much in the political center.
Trump has nothing to lose by nominating whoever he wants. And if it creates a fight, that's only good for him. That gives him energy because it works in his advantage to have people fighting against him. So I don't think he can lose in terms of, I mean, he might lose some of the nominations, but I think it fuels him if people start coming at him about his nominees.
Brilliant point. All right.
Yeah, I just think there's frustration post-COVID. You know, I personally think Dr. Fauci in totality did a good job.
Right. I agree with that. All right. I think Dr. Fauci was right with regard to COVID 90% of the time.
With the fact that he had at the time. But when he comes out afterwards and says the 6 feet distance that I made it up, it's really hard to then turn around and say we should believe, you know, all the things that HHS and others are saying. And I think Democrats have paid a price for saying the last 4 years, scientists, experts, when the politicians are elected to take that advice, but then make decisions that they think are in the best interest of the country. And it's
Great point there by Dan. All right, the overreach beyond what expertise says. All right, this is Commentary Magazine, bunch of very smart neocons.
MAGA claims it once cleaned. What he is very good at doing is stamping his feet, performing in the same way that AOC is good at stamping her feet and performing.
Talking about Matt Gaetz and AOC are actually quite friendly. Right, I wouldn't be surprised if they're hooking up.
From the other side of the aisle. And so with Trump picking him, it does satisfy the sort of performative base of MAGA that wants to see someone like Gaetz yell and scream on cable news. There's no way he can run that department or clean it up, which I think even people like us who aren't mired in conspiracy theories about the Department of Justice feel needs to happen.
But, you know, I just want to say to Christine's point, it goes to show that Trump really sees no separation between the performative aspects of MAGA and the policy aspects of MAGA, where you would think that maybe there's a sort of a game going on where they have a sort of a chorus and a sort of, you know, operative crew. It's not the case, unless there is the theory that Trump is sort of offering up Gaetz to get knocked down so he can get others through, which I tend not to think is the case, mostly because I just don't think that's the way Trump thinks. I think Trump doesn't want any losses. He's not someone who's willing to sacrifice anything he doesn't have to. So when he says he wants to push something through or someone through, I think that's exactly what he wants.
You know, I'm not entirely sure about that because there were dozens of radical House Ethics Committee was set to vote on a full investigation with to release a report that had been done on Gaetz's misbehavior. Gaetz then resigns immediately from the House, thus escaping the release of this report, which might have happened just tomorrow. So does anybody really think that report isn't going to be leaked and made public? I don't
resign if Gaetz becomes AG. So maybe there's that silver lining for the MAGA people, right? He'll get nothing done once he's installed, but people will flee that division.
Right. Well, I mean, look, Trump came into the presidency in 2017, and there was an acting attorney general who, along with the sitting FBI director, literally tried to get him impeached. Like the person who was running the Justice Department was playing an inside game against him, as was Jim Comey. So he has reason. Even paranoids have enemies, and he had enemies at Justice. And I do not, for one second, think that he should not be pursuing an attorney general who would understand, as a good Secretary of State does as well, or as a good defense secretary.
And I just want to say, I think that's why the Gaetz pick was such a surprise to many people, because there were names being circulated, people like Mark Paoletta, Mike Davis, even Mark Whitaker, who was acting attorney general, who, were clearly going to be loyal to Trump, who were part of the MAGA movement, but also had more experience. I mean, in the case of Paoletta, he's been a well-connected Washington lawyer for 3 decades, right? Instead, went with Gaetz, who, he is a lawyer. He does have a law degree, and he practiced law for 2 years before going into the Florida state legislature, and then, of course, coming to Congress. Not quite the breadth of experience or depth of experience that some of us were hoping a Trump's nominee would bring to the position of Attorney General.
Anyway, this is an interesting wrinkle.
in the never a dull day with the Dodgers school of Trump. Do people know this phrase? The Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers, were a very up and down team, incredibly roller coastery. Like they would be in first place in June, they would be in last place in August, they would come back to being third place in September. It was like, and the phrase among their fans was, "It's never a dull day with the Dodgers." And we're back to a world in which there's just never a dull day.
It's so funny you say that. I had the exact same thought at the end of the day yesterday. I was reflecting that I had forgotten just the volume of news that happens when Donald Trump is the president. And so, so we open.
Yeah, I forgot this too. I forgot about the volume of news that happens when Donald Trump is president.
The day yesterday talking about Pete Hegseth, and by the end of the day, we were dealing with Tulsi Gabbard and Matt Gaetz. And who knows what today, Thursday, will bring. And that is kind of the effect Trump has on Washington. It's like you're stepping on the third rail of the metro system, and you're just kind of, you're all vibrating. And the fact is, people voted for it this time. The voters were under no illusions about what they were going to get, and it's starting.
Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard.
Interesting stuff about.
We should talk about. We should move on to Tulsi Gabbard. So Tulsi Gabbard, as you said, former representative from Hawaii, veteran from the medical corps, and turned
very recent Republican.
Very recent Republican. Although, if you remember, one of the ways that she made her bones as somebody who was going to move in this direction was her really remarkable performances in the Democratic debates in 2019, which how formidable she was in, and particularly, by the way, on matters that we should now talk about relating to war and peace and the behavior of the ideas about the military and all of that, how she is one of the people who destroyed Kamala Harris in the debates. She's smart. She is tough. She is cold as ice. And obviously, as is very important to Trump, fetching. And so there she is as the director of national intelligence, which would be a matter of total horror to me, were it not for the bureaucratic realities of the job that she has been put in, by which I mean she is an apologist for the Assad regime in Syria, which is, unlike Israel, is a literally genocidal regime.
We've got Elliott Blatt back on the show. Mr. Blatt, are you tired of winning, sir?
Can you hear me, Luke?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, sorry. My phone's a little squirrely right now.
I thought you were drinking a slushy.
No, I'm not. Wouldn't it be great if those things were just completely made illegal?
No. They're part of a balanced diet, bro.
There's a pinnacle of everything that's wrong with the American diet. So you're not stoked about RFK like me, bro, are you?
No, I'm not. But I'm stoked by all the excitement in the news. It's just bewildering and mind-blowing.
All right. Let's take a big picture here. Does it even matter? Does it even matter? Like, who's at the top of these giant bureaucracies? Is it just...
It can matter.
Yeah.
Right? Some people don't leave an imprint. It's like if you got a small penis and you very rigorously roger a girl, there's not going to be much of a hole that you've left behind. But if you have a big penis and you vigorously roger your girl, right, there will be a big gap that's left.
Good point. Hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So why all of this RFK angst? I don't get
it. Because he says a lot of things that go against the current scientific consensus. That's why.
Yeah, but do you really think the scientific consensus is what drives health policy?
Yes.
No, it doesn't. This is where you're wrong. This is where you're mistaken. What drives health policy is the donors. And the donors are the sugar industry, and they drive health policy. A real health and human services bureaucracy would do everything it possibly can to lower the refined sugar intake of the average American. And this would pay such dividends in terms of real health outcomes. It'd be unbelievable, as Trump would say. What do you think?
I don't know. I will leave it to whatever studies show. I don't think it's lobbies that entice people to eat sugar. People eat sugar because it's just so damn delicious. But there is definitely something going on in that America has a massive obesity problem now that is far worse than in the 1950s. So something has changed. Something bad has gone on.
So the health bureaucracy, I'd imagine, has grown enormously since the 1950s, has it not?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and have health outcomes improved or degraded in that time span?
Well, average life expectancy has increased. So I would say overall there's been an improvement in life expectancy, but there has become a massive obesity and diabetes problem in the US.
Right. So you have like all of this health technology which can perform these great, heroic medical interventions to keep your heart moving while you're sitting in a bloated corpse, pre-corpse, that's not health, Luke. The statistics don't measure the actual outcome. That's the problem.
Why do you think there's been a dramatic change in American level of obesity in the last 50 years?
Changing attitudes towards sugar consumption and the completely unchecked allowance of advertising for sugar and the total just absence of any governmental interference in this widespread universal poisoning.
Okay, I just put that into Google, and Google AI spits out the obesity epidemic in the United States began in the 1970s. That rings true to me. I was 11. I came to the United States. I was amazed at how fat people were compared to Australia. Now I go back to Australia, and I just realize that Australians are simply about 20 to 30 years behind Americans. Now Australians are every bit as fat as Americans. So 1970s, let me just run through this. It'll take 1 minute. Health officials first noticed an increase in obesity in many Western countries, and then the obesity epidemic emerges throughout the Western world in the 1980s. Factors that may have contributed: processed foods, the availability of cheap, highly processed and calorie-rich foods increased after World War II. Supermarkets offered a large selection of easy-to-prepare, high-calorie foods. The rise in the use of passenger vehicles led to an inactive lifestyle. Fast food became more common, and food available at restaurants and diners changed to become less healthy. And then another factor is that dietary recommendations changed to recommend more carbs and less fat and protein. Okay, over to you.
Okay, all of that's true, but the big thing that you're missing, the elephant in the room, is the corn subsidies.
Yeah.
So they subsidize corn production. So we produce way more corn than we actually eat, that we actually need. So it's either converted into ethanol or it's converted into corn syrup. And this corn syrup is the sweetener that's used for slushies, to bring in, familiar culprit, but everything else is completely laden with corn syrup because sugar is now, with the introduction of corn syrup, sugar is far more prevalent and far cheaper than it's ever. It's so easy to sweeten things like this, and therefore it works its way into everything. And human beings are programmed to like sugar. That's just a natural response that people have. So it's a sort of a low intensity drug that everyone's become addicted to. And we don't have the metabolism to process that amount of sugar. Therefore, we have what we see. We see obesity, we see diabetes. What are those same statistics about diabetes since the 1950s? It would blow your mind. I don't have them in front of me, obviously. But let's not act like this is complicated. It's not complicated. It needs to be broken up. And the monetary interest behind sugar and corn syrup and all of that stuff are immense. And these are the people that are squealing the loudest about a figure like RFK, who would potentially be radical enough to address this head on. Over to you, as you like to say.
What do you think about Michael Bloomberg? He imposed all sorts of regulations to try to discourage the consumption of sugar.
I support it. I support it. I don't care. I don't care about my libertarianism. I don't care about what tastes good, bro. I'm for what makes you good, bro.
we got to do something about obesity among Americans. It's just out of control, and so
Okay.
I'm on board.
Okay, so you're so does that make you any more enthusiastic about RFK, or are you still skeptical?
No, I'm still overall quite skeptical. I would like someone less problematic. My God, I sound like a liberal making this case, but there's definitely a problem, right, with obesity in America.
Bro, but there's fat lesbians that are resigning from the healthcare bureaucracy. Aren't you upset about that?
I am if they're great scientists, right? If seriously
If they're
they're great scientists.
but they're doing nothing about sugar. What value do they add?
Well, I'm not sure that I want government regulating American diets. I would like the government to put forward recommendations that will make for a healthier country.
Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead. Yeah.
We're way past recommendations, bro. We're in like the the plane is like within sight, and we can see the land. We can see that we're in a nosedive, and the ground is in sight. We're way past regulations. We're into parachute. We're into emergency measures territory. This is where you and I differ.
Hey, have you had those chocolate smoothies at Jamba Juice? Chocolate peanut butter smoothies that are over 1,000 calories?
No, bro. How are they?
Oh, they're so good, bro. So good.
They're good. Oh my God.
But they're filled with protein. They're healthy.
No. You have the wrong view, bro. The wrong view. And here I am. I'm here to correct your wrong views.
When did you last have a slushie?
I honestly can't remember. I was probably like 14.
When did you last have a Jamba Juice smoothie?
I don't think I've ever been inside a Jamba Juice.
Oh my God. What about a lemon meringue pie? When did you last have some lemon meringue pie?
30 years ago.
Mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Bro, I eat sugar. I'm not like an absolute no sugar dude, as it were. I eat a very small amount of sugar. So if you think about it, it's easy to think about this naturalistically. Like really high intense sweet experiences were relatively rare in nature. So certain times of year, berries would be in season, certain fruits would be in season. You'd get a certain blast of sugar here and there, but it wouldn't be this high intensity what's it called? Metabolic assault on a day in basis. We're not evolved to be sugar hounds, bro.
Chocolate chip cookies filled with luscious big gobs of chocolate chips.
Bro, I'm trying to bring you out of your sort of base animalistic urges.
Freshly baked chocolate chip cookies with a glass of milk.
This is why this conversation is so hard. Even you, with the galaxy brain that you have and the ultra high IQ and everything, you can't get beyond your sort of animalistic cravings, bro. I'm trying to lift you, and then by proxy, the entirety of the United States up through you to recognize that we need to bring our diet into the realm of the intellect, and
do you prefer dark chocolate or white chocolate? I think I like
lately
white.
I like the white chocolate lately because
the white chocolate.
It has a little less caffeine.
So I had this girlfriend, and we started having sex, and she asked me, it was kind of a disturbing question early in the quote unquote relationship. Do you think friends can have sex? And somehow I asked her, how do you feel about sex? And she says, it's like chocolate. She loved it. She loved it. The only time that she ever said,
there was no racial connotation there, though, was there?
No. The only time she ever said, I love you, was when I was giving her a good rogering. Kip, you're an All-American. Kip, any thoughts on what we've been discussing?
She said, "Hey, you know, I miss Jill and Joe and all my funky friends, but my street understanding was just enough to know what she really meant." And I got to thinking while she was talking, because I know she told the story of the special places that she goes when she rides with the others in the subway singing, "Don't turn around, uh-oh.
Oh.
Luke Ford is back in town,
Uh-oh.
You remember that one from the early 80s?
I do. Not one of my favorites, but there was a time. There was a time that I weighed 190 pounds. Right, that's the most I've ever weighed. I was on this medication Nardil that gave me a huge sweet tooth, and so I was famous in 1994. I would go to these Jewish events, then I would just devour the desserts that were placed out afterwards. I mean, my hands would be sticky, my face would be sticky. I would have like six desserts, and I think I blimped up to 190, maybe 195 pounds, and I had a belly. That's the most I've ever weighed. So, Elliott Blatt, how tall are you? What's the most you've ever weighed? Elliott.
Sorry, muted, bro. Muted. I don't divulge numbers, bro.
Oh, okay. Kip, how tall are you? What's the most you've ever weighed?
5'10" and a half, 5'10" and 3/4. The day I became a mystic, I was 262 pounds.
Whoa.
And I went down to 164. It took about 17 months. And I was a triathlete, you know, in shape by then.
And what do you think about the Bobby Kennedy nomination, Kip, to run Health and Human Services?
I like it. I don't really like him or anything. I think he's a phony, like most politicians. But like Elliott was talking, if it gets everybody talking about high fructose corn syrup and makes them dial it back a little bit, that's not a bad thing at all. And if it gets us reconsidering things that I've wondered about for a long time, like fluoride, that's not a bad thing either. I remember remember I told you I have to not scratch too deep at stuff or else it gives me a complex or something. But back in 2005, I believe it was, it always struck me as odd about the whole fluoride thing, because fluoridation started in the early 50s, but Crest toothpaste was available in 1952. And, you know, they fluoridate 100% of your water supply, but like 99.5% of it goes to like water your lawn or wash your clothes or your baths or your showers or washing your dishes or washing your dogs or taking a toilet break or whatever. So like the fraction is like 1/200 of the damn water that's being ingested. So like makes no sense. And like Elliott probably tell you, most of them people in San Francisco, they probably drink water out of a bottle anyway. So I think that it's probably bullshit of how they tried to justify fluoridation. And it probably comes down to benefiting somebody like Alcoa, because I think it's a byproduct of the aluminum industry. So
how many times have you been vaccinated, Kip, for COVID?
Zero.
You're a pure blood.
Yes. Yeah. What you're thinking on the whole fluoride thing? Why would
I was always pro fluoride because I just figured there must be evidence for it, but now I started to read that the evidence is quite mixed. Elliott, do you have an opinion on fluoridating water?
I don't really. It's not an issue I ever really thought about in any depth. You know, I can appreciate there being skepticism around something that's it seems like such a novelty. You know, like all throughout all history, there's been no fluoridated water, and suddenly we suddenly out of the ether. You know, we suddenly need fluoridated water. It's been curious to me, but it's nothing that I've really deliberated on for any length of time. So I'm open to those arguments, but I haven't like studied them.
Okay. Kip, why do you think Americans are so fat?
I mean, I don't know. I care more about why we're so dumb. But you're right, because what is it, diabetes or whatever?
Yeah.
It seems like everybody's got it now. It's the new thing. So, back to the other thing, I got as y'all were just talking, I was thinking about that book from '87 that gay guy Bloom wrote.
Harold Bloom.
Alan
Bloom. Alan Bloom.
The
The Closing of the American Mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And he kept putting his finger on the 50s. He kept saying when he first started teaching, like in 1950 or 51, people, they could find analogies through like Bible talk or the Iliad or something. You get what I'm saying? They had something where he could connect to them. He said by 63, 64, they didn't have those references anymore. In fact, they didn't have that same that wonder about the world that he had seen, only 10 or 12 years earlier. Of course, that's only anecdotal of like one person. That's just his thinking, but it gets you thinking. I think of our society now, Luke and Elliott, as a bunch of voyeurs and LARPers. And weirdos like that Jill Levine dressed up looking like a soldier, cross-dressing right in front of God and everybody. And Fetterman in his board shorts and T-shirts standing in Congress or whatever. And goddamn Swifties, as a voting block and stuff. And it makes me wonder, was it the radio? Is that where we turned our brain off? Was it the TV that made everybody turn their brain off? Was it the fluoride? Was it that we used to be better before we became like the dominator of the world and we just got so damn soft or whatever?
Video killed the radio star.
I'm just saying, it seems
you're right.
Now.
It's the overall slackening of cultural institutions that's the problem. That keeps picking up on. It's not like one thing, it's like subtly everything.
Yeah,
like
the center didn't hold.
What?
I'm saying it's like all of a sudden during our lifetime, the center didn't hold, and all of a sudden what used to be on the edges kind of slipped into the main now, and it's all going weird. And I'm just waiting for the NFL and NASCAR and everything else to morph into something unrecognizable.
Yeah, like when I go to the beach and I just look out and what do I see? A bunch of just fat tattooed lesbians. I think, what went wrong, bro?
Yeah, Luke, what's going on? You're supposed to be taking care of us on this stuff. How'd we get like this?
Well, I think there are some ways that we're better off, and there's some ways that we're worse off. So the obesity thing, I think, is a bad direction for America. I think celebrating sexual perversity, I think, is a bad thing for America. I think we were morally stronger in the 1950s compared to now overall. You didn't have to lock your car. You didn't have to lock your home. So there are
Luke,
a lot of ways that we've gotten worse.
So Luke, when you say morally stronger, so this is where I think my analysis starts to become relevant. It's like people don't suddenly become morally weak or strong, right? Moral strength, I believe, emanates from one's physical strength. And by physical strength, I don't necessarily mean how much you can bench. I mean the proper balance of hormones in your body, right? And this proper balance of hormones in your body is thrown out of whack, and I hate to keep returning to this, by the just idiotically oversized levels of sugar that's permeated the diet. This has turned people from normal people 60 years ago to basically freaks today. Now, I know this is very esoteric, and I know this has got a sort of woo-woo connotation, but if you think about it, it might actually be true. So I don't think it's ideas that matter. I think what it is, what really defines who you are on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis is your body, and then your body sort of informs your emotions, and your emotions inform your mind. So there's a certain holistic understanding that we lack as a culture that we need to rediscover.
And they're taking it one step deeper. If you become a mystic, maybe there's even a candle inside that. You know what I'm saying? Beyond those three, but I don't want to make assumptions for Mr. Blatt. But yeah,
Kip, what happened to your beeping alarm? I don't hear your beeping alarm.
Can we have a little moment of silence? A moment of
Yes.
silence for the 9-volt smoke alarm battery.
Yeah.
I feel like I lose a considerable amount of street cred by changing it, and I've kind of already missed that chirp, but I'm thinking about taking the battery back out, so I can be 100. But I know there's like 10 smoke alarms in this damn house, so it'll happen soon enough. At least I got the new battery from the dollar store, so we know it's guaranteed not to last more than 60 days.
When you ride your motorbike, do you wear a helmet? Yep.
I do. I do. I was gonna. I'm glad we got Mr. Blatt here. I was gonna do
Go
a
ahead,
little
Kip.
trivia. I was gonna do a trivia. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Sure.
Today is, what is today? Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
So who do we celebrate on Thursday? Who's the name?
Thursday night football. We got
No.
Washington playing
What's the
Philadelphia.
namesake? Your whole life you've been celebrating this day called Thursday. So who you celebrating?
Thor,
Thursday.
Jupiter.
Yes, sir. Thor, yes. And yesterday, who were you celebrating?
Mercury.
Woden's Day.
Woden.
Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah,
and
but
tomorrow, who do you celebrate?
I know all this astrology. So tomorrow's Friday. Friday is Venus. Saturday is obviously Saturn. Sunday is the Sun. Monday, Moon. Tuesday is Mars, and Wednesday is Mercury.
I say that to say that we kind of got lucky because these woke people were so unhinged. We're lucky they didn't even change the day of the week on us. You know what I'm saying? To Trans Day and Queer Day and whatever all those alphabet things are. We weren't far from that. Y'all do realize, right?
Well, Stalin tried to change the calendar, and I think after the French Revolution, they tried to change the calendar, and various revolutionaries have tried to change the calendar.
Yeah, they're against nature. Revolutionaries are just hate nature because they're just on the losing end of the sort of nature hand that's been dealt to them. So the French Revolution, I think they tried to change the calendar into like a 10-month system, like 10, 40 or 10, 35-day months or something like that. Thermidor. It's crazy stuff. This is just the natural leftist tendency because they get away from nature. Once you get away from nature, all hell breaks loose, bro.
Earlier, when I had first been blipped in but wasn't talking yet, y'all are comparing something about 1970 to now, some stark change.
Yeah, obesity, massive increase in obesity from 1970 to now.
I was going to interject one thing. I'm kind of a stats nerd. The median age of Americans now is 40. And in 1970, when you were just a young lad, it was only 28. So we've aged as a nation for a dozen years. I don't know that that'll add much or anything to y'all's discussion, but we're sort of kind of going the way of Japan, and if these abortionists have their way, it'll just keep on going. What do you think that affects in the near term?
I was wondering if you were correct, and so I just Googled it, and yes, in 1970, you're right. The average age was 28, and now it's about 40. So Americans are having a lot fewer kids. I mean, many American parents will never get to be grandparents. We have fewer married Americans. We have less social connection. We have fewer bonds between Americans. We have more loneliness. We have more men growing old alone. Not a good development.
Not good. We're not trending. That's not a winning trend to be making America great, is it?
No.
One thing I did hear Jay Powell sometime within the last 2 or 3 days say that although we have full employment, he doesn't know if they're going to be able to, hold to the dual mandate right now. Now, what that is, guys, that's code, because I've told you before what the dual mandate is full employment and 2% inflation. Why 2%, Kip? because they're afraid you might storm the streets and burn things if it's 3 or 4%. So he was basically saying that inflation is still going to be a problem. But he was doing that by saying it looks like we're only going to be able to lick one part of that dual mandate for the time being. Any thoughts on that?
I've got some thoughts.
No, go ahead, Elliott.
Yeah, so it seems to me, this is my person looking out, it seems like all economic policy has been designed towards increasing asset prices for homes. They've given no consideration to the fact that wages have not kept pace with this is boring economics crap, so I hate to bore you, but if somebody can't buy a home, they're not going to start a family, right? And so they don't want to live in an apartment and go to some inner city school and, enjoy all of the sort of diversity that goes on in these inner city schools. They're just not going to start families. And so we've decided that boomers' real estate portfolios are more important than, or younger generations. And we're now bearing the bitter fruit of that. I don't think there's an analysis that argues against that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we owe so much now in debt that we're kidding ourselves. No politician gets elected by cutting programs. No politician's going to get elected by raising taxes. So what they're going to keep doing is just, keep adding on to this debt until we start learning a new word, quadrillion, one day. So you're right.
But the thing is, no, you can lower the cost of homes by building more of them, and you can subsidize first home ownership at the expense of second home ownership. So there's things that you can do policy-wise that can address this. But to pretend this is not an issue, I think, is to ignore reality.
Yeah, because you hit the nail on the head. The young people, the mountain's so high, it's like we don't have oxygen, and we're talking K2 levels that you got to climb, and they're not even willing. They're going to sit around with their action figures on their desk and just live in apartments and keep LARPing all day about maybe one day starting a family, and then they turn 40 and the women's eggs don't even work or whatever. So he's got his finger on something there.
Who do you guys think is going to win between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson?
No opinion.
I think Tyson's going to win. Old as he may be, he was just such a titan in his day. I think he still got it.
Very, very astute analysis there, Elliott. Elliott, so out of all the Trump nominees for cabinet positions, is the Bobby Kennedy one the one you're most excited about?
Yeah, but it's tight with Gaetz. I like this guy who I didn't know much
Gaetz,
about.
As Attorney General would be lit.
But so didn't you tell me that Chuck Johnson was instrumental in
introducing Matt Gaetz to his wife? Yeah, they were quite close friends.
Okay. Matt Gaetz aside, it's interesting to note. So I don't know how much you know about this, but I've sort of had this sort of low-grade feud going on with Chuck Johnson, and he ultimately ended up blocking me. But before blocking me, he kept coming up with these giant predictions like Biden would survive that sort of, dementia crisis, and that didn't come to pass. And then he kept saying that Kamala would win. And that obviously didn't come to pass. And then finally, he's just left. He's just taken a sabbatical. He's taken the L. So he would just go on and on with these bold declarations about what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. And he was wrong every single time, Luke. Every single time. He took the L. And He just left the internet. He left Substack. He left Twitter. And he couldn't stop tweeting before he blocked me. 30 tweets a day I would get from him about this sort of incredibly ornate conspiracy theory of one sort or another about Israelis and Russian Israelis and all kinds of Israelis, being connected to this one and that one. And it was just so funny. He just summarily threw in the towel. To me, it was a big W, bro.
Yeah.
So,
Kip, anything about the new Trump cabinet appointees that, is there any one that you're particularly excited about?
If I'd like to just speak generally, I'd like to
Mhm.
say they shot him. They drug him into court for 90 plus trumped up felonies, pardon the pun. They attacked him and his followers for over 8 years. I think some of those people from January 6th haven't even had their court date yet. They canceled us. They fired us. They openly shunned us. They burned our cities. They destroyed our statues and our traditions. They unleashed the most unholy culture warriors to pervert every aspect of American life. I want Trump to hire assassins to exact revenge.
God forbid.
I don't want him playing nice and hiring people who can't see it, that America needs wholesale changes. And Trump got the mandate to do it. I don't want him seeking approval from those garbage entities like the New York Times or the network media. Don't forget, Obama was using Lois Lerner and the IRS to attack Republicans a long time ago. They've been unfair to Republicans for a long time.
Right. Deny them tax exempt status for conservative nonprofits.
Yes. And now the media has amnesia. They've forgotten the totalitarian tactics they've been using for a long time. So I just wanted to say that. Any thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, these are all recognizable complaints that people on the right are going to have, and there's a strong basis for these complaints. I don't believe that we need to have any assassinations, but
well, yeah, I was being a little bit hyperbolic there, but I mean, if we're to send Elliott Blatt as if Trump hires Elliott Blatt as the czar from San Francisco, what does he need to do to make San Francisco great again? You know what I'm saying? Whatever Elliott Blatt thinks San Francisco needs, I bet America needs pretty much the same kind of fixing. Elliott?
Yeah, I think we need to colonize Guam or recolonize Guam. And then we need to bring the fentanyl community to Guam and allow them to enjoy fentanyl in Guam.
That was very subtle. I like that, Elliot. That is much better than alternatives to that.
Yes. I shouldn't have used the A word, right?
Yeah. Just share the fentanyl experience.
Right.
Yeah, just the bliss, the tropical
the
bliss.
fentanyl bliss. Allow people who want the fentanyl bliss to have the fentanyl bliss.
Also,
in Guam, like
in Guam, where they can't hurt anyone.
Paradise.
Yeah,
that's right.
Also, because I have old parents in their 80s, I just want everybody to remember back in 2020 that the government used identity politics to choose to first give the COVID vaccine to the frontline medical workers instead of America's elderly. Their rationale was that percentage-wise, there were more minorities among the medical frontline workers than the mostly white elderly Americans. And that rationale makes the decision, crazier than trans and an 8-year-old or drag queens showing up at my school or the 1619 Project or any of that shit. So I don't know. I don't know if you've ever spoke to that, but just the rationale that they use to deprive, the old people like my parents who, are more likely to have all those comorbidities that ultimately were the contributing factor to people's death. Could either one of you speak to that, both of you?
Yeah, the racial rationing, I think, is a bad idea in public health care. It just makes everyone quite suspicious, and I just think it's a terrible idea. I saw there's a very compelling but quite woke TV show called New Amsterdam about a woke lefty guy who takes over as a public health hospital administrator in New York. And it's a good show if you can stomach the woke themes. But in one episode, he decides to not hand out the vaccines to the elderly or to first come, first serve. Instead, he changes it so that people of color get first access to the vaccines, and they don't show up in time, and so all the vaccines become useless. So he was trying to do something woke, and I give the TV series credit for showing how ridiculous that can be. If you can
Right.
stomach the woke themes, New Amsterdam's a terrific hospital show.
Right. Well, it was just we were going through and still are going through some sort of societal cancer, and it seems like it spread like wildfire, and the media stokes the embers by acting as if we with the dissenting opinions are the Archie Bunker dinosaurs. You remember Norman Lear had that show from the
Yes.
70s?
Yeah.
And they tried to create Archie Bunker to represent everything that was old and stale and needs to get the fuck out of the way. And they had that meathead Rob Reiner promoting all the warm and fuzzy ideas of the left. And they treat us like Archie Bunker every day. So I know I'm kind of going back to Trump, but I'm afraid Trump himself, he seeks, if you notice, he seeks that New York elitist approval, and he shouldn't. He should be mad at him. But do both of y'all notice how he seems to like, he wants them to like him. He wants to be liked by them. And we know it's never going to happen.
Yeah. He's very needy for the New York Times in particular to write positive things about him. But I want to wrap up for this evening. Elliott Blatt, any final words for tonight?
Nothing, bro. Good convo. Nice to talk to you. Nice to talk to you, Kip. To be continued.
Blessings. Okay, Kip, any final words?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Kamala, of the 19 states that she won, 12 of them were no ID required states. 5 more where non-photo ID was all that was necessary, and she only won 2 states that required photo ID.